So hello and a warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mark Morley and this is the IT Business Partner Playbook, a new series where I'll be joined every week by business relationship managers and business partners from around the globe. I'll be inviting them to share their ideas and inspiration so that together we can create and develop a resource that can be used freely and widely by our peers. Last week we met with Bruna Collado, a BRM for Unilever in Brazil. Having been a people manager and a project manager for over a decade, she decided she wanted to become more involved in shaping the business strategy and demand, and Unilever is a perfect place for her to start that journey. After nearly 2 years, she's really enjoying being part of that team, and it's still growing and developing, so I'm sure she'll enjoy continuing that journey. Her parting word of advice was for us all to stay curious, which I really enjoyed. And you can see her video on YouTube and listen to the audio on the links that I'll share in the description here. This week, I'm really excited to speak with Bhupinder Siran, the Associate Director of Strategic Partnerships at the University of Southampton. Like Martin, who we spoke with a couple of weeks ago, Bhupinder is also very keen to get involved with communities and councils outside of work, and I hope we hear more about that today. So Bhupinder, thanks again for joining me. I know this is a hectic part of the year, so I appreciate you spending the time with me. Can I hand over to you for an introduction, and then we can open the inspiration floodgates, I hope.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for the intro. So, like I said, my name is Bhupinder Siran. I currently work at the University of Southampton and have been here for about 17 years. And I've been in the BRM role for about 10 years. We started off as business relationship managers, were restructured as things happen in life, and changed to strategic business partners. And I think that was quite an important part of our kind of maturity at the university, because I suspect many other BRMs, and having had conversations, one of the challenges that we all find ourselves in is that we get drawn into operational matters. And it was an interesting change that we found when we were restructured. The team got smaller, but with the title becoming strategic business partners, we were able to almost reset the expectations of what people could expect to work with us on. So that was quite useful coming out of a situation that, isn't always the best thing with restructures. So yeah, the team's been quite established for a number of years, and I've been leading the team for, I don't know, six or so years, and constantly looking for ways to grow its not status in terms of recognition, but the status if its importance and the value that it can bring to the organisation that we're working. So yeah, that's me. I have lots of different strands of activities that I get involved in, and I'm happy to talk about that as we have this conversation. Yeah.
Just if we can start there, talking about how you've changed your name to be strategic. When we started getting involved in the training and the body of knowledge, language was something that they said straight away that language is really important. So you have to start using the right terms, and it might seem a bit academic, I suppose, but using the right words can kind of set the tone. So it's interesting to hear that kind of by changing the name or your titles, that's already changing people's perception.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that in other things you do, other areas within what you're doing?
I do, yeah. So I think it's a bit, I don't know, many organisations in higher education, things are very hierarchical. Person's role can define what conversations they then get party to. And I think with a strategic title, we are much more able to be involved in conversations which allow us to do what a BRM should really be doing, which is informing and advising and kind of guiding on things, and also being part of a situation where we are gathering intelligence that can help our IT department respond to the growing needs or the changing needs of the university. So I think that title kind of opens the door to a myriad of opportunities. I don't really know how else to kind of share it other than the operational was something that we really struggled with, being operational. And I'm not saying that you should ever get rid of those responsibilities, because I think it's good for a business partner to have some connection to the everyday activities, because that's what makes you understand. You need to kind of go deep to be able to then extract out and understand how things kind of joined together. But that title change did help. I'm not saying it fixed all our problems or challenges, but it did definitely help.
So we've had a few episodes. Bruno was one example, and Jeremy, where they'd come from a technical background.
Yeah.
And it's kind of easy to be drawn back into that. So when you're dealing with the operational issues, it's kind of a bit easy to get kind of a bit too deeply involved.
Yeah.
Is your background, do you have a technical background?
No, not really, other than kind of user side, general user computing.
Right.
I started off as a business analyst, and found that it was a bit too technical for me. So I did that for about 4 years. I enjoyed it. I did what I needed to do, but it wasn't really, the role didn't sing to me. And then we used to have, we have business relationship managers. And I thought, what do they do? That seems really interesting. And as I started to delve into it, it was less about technical knowledge, and it was more about how do we just work together? How do we build these relationships that allow us to have these conversations about where the future needs to look like, technically speaking. And I felt that was something that did sing to me, and that's why I went for the role. But no, in terms of technical background, no, I don't have any kind of IT background. I do find myself falling into the trap of solutionizing sometimes,
Right.
and you need to have to wake yourself up and think, no, don't do that, and then you take a step back. But it's not. It's a little bit easier than me, and I suspect, than some of my colleagues who are much more technically minded.
And so within the BRM team, what is the size and what are their backgrounds?
So we've got 4 business relationship managers, and at universities, we are breaking up into faculties, and we have support services and professional services. We divide ourselves up, 1 partner to a faculty, or maybe 2 faculties, but the backgrounds are quite varied. So we've got technical, former technical PM, through to just, it's a myriad of skills. I think that's probably the fairest way to say it. It doesn't all have to be technical. And I think sometimes that can be to the strength of a business relationship, a bit of business partner, is if you can speak the language of people who aren't technical, then you can understand and have a conversation that actually means something to them, as opposed to just, what's a VM, and what's a network, and what's an access point, and what's a, so on and so forth. Yeah.
So that's my next question, is how, who do you think found it easier to move into this role, and who do they get along better with? Is it people within the IT teams or people within business, but obviously faculties?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's got quite lots of layers to that. I think the role, individually and as a role, we are probably more understood by the business.
Okay.
Because we speak their language. IT departments, there is a danger that they see the business relationship role isn't as mature as a project manager or a BA or a change manager. It's not been around that long. So some people don't really know how to engage with the role. They don't know what it's there for. They're not sure if it's a souped up, help desk person or what it is. Whereas the business, they kind of see you as the primary link to IT and the person that they'll go to speak to about whatever it is that's, whatever their thinking is. So I think there's a better relationship in an odd way with the business than when you bring it back into IT, where there's a bit of a, well, what do we do with this? When do we engage with this role? And although over the years we have worked very hard to kind of clarify what the role, how it can help, there's always that, we know what PM does and we know what a technical architect does, but where does a business relationship manager fit? Where do they quite, get involved? So that's always an ongoing.
Well, because I found out with a lot of people I speak to is that their struggle is with IT, which is very strange because a lot of BRMs have come from that background. So for them to have trouble dealing with their own kind of their old teammates is curious to me. Is there anything that you do as a team to try and build those relationships specifically with the IT teams?
Yeah, so we try to meet with our new starters, particularly like in the project space. When we have new colleagues join, we'll invite them along to our team meeting. We'll have a chat about how we can help them, what we do. We try to have regular meetings with the associate directors of our technical teams, the product kind of owners almost. We have regular engagement with them. So we are working quite hard to make sure that we aren't fragmented from the rest of the department, that we are actually working together.
Yeah.
So that's one step. We've got a SharePoint page. I've created a little video of talks about the high level responsibilities of what a business partner does, kind of a little quick animation. All this stuff is just there to help, educate, I suppose.
Yeah.
Everyone loves that. When would we engage with the business partners, and what could we expect from them? Try to push that information out there as much as we can.
That's really good and quite interesting, because one of the things I've found, again, curious, is that with the BRM, it just seems one of those roles that when you come into it, there really should be quite a strong handover in terms of not only what your duties are, but who you're going to be working with. So I think that's obviously really critical. It doesn't seem to be that common. And so is that something you when you bring BRMs on, or you've mentioned new people in the other teams, but is that something you also do within the BRM team, is to make sure if someone joins, they know who they're working with, what their relationships were like previously?
Yeah, I mean, our team hasn't changed in quite a long time, so I couldn't really speak to about new starters. But when I started, 10 years ago, I was given a good handover. I knew who the stakeholders are, or the customers are, the partners, whatever the correct terminology. You talked about language at the start, and I started to understand the makeup of their business, who the key contacts were. So that I found that very useful, and I would expect when the time would come, or if the time comes for me to have that changeover in my team, that's how I would like to pick that up as well.
Okay. Where does BRM roll up into within the university?
Where does it,
roll up into as a function?
So we're within our IT department, and we report. Our IT department is broken into, I guess, three directorates. We have a customer experience side, we have a service delivery side, which is kind of the back end, and then we've got the office of our Chief Digital Information Officer, which essentially overlooks everything else. We sit within the customer experience directorate because we are, outward facing and very aligned with what our the project management team and change managers, and we kind of work with them quite a bit to make sure that our stakeholder engagement is consistent, aligned, and considered with the peaks and troughs of the kind of the calendar. So that's where we sit. I report into the director of customer experience, who then reports into our Chief Digital Information Officer. So that's where we kind of sit within the hierarchy of the uni.
Do you have a CIO as well, or is that person the CDO?
That's the CDI, CDO, yeah.
Okay. Well, what does a typical day look like for your team, your BRMs?
So we have a lot of engagement with the faculties, the academic community. So we have key stakeholders or partners that we try to link in with very regularly. That's to just do information sharing, what's going on in IT. So we've got some big IT projects happening, and we would make sure that the pertinent updates are shared with those key connections, but also then opens up a forum for if they've got questions or they've got concerns or they've got, there's an opportunity here, we could link it with another piece of work. That would happen in those forums. And then we would bring that information back into IT in those meetings that we have internally with the other kind of associate directors or management, to start to shape how would we want to respond to that. And so it's really a combination of meetings with academic or faculty colleagues, professional services, bringing that information back into professional services, and maybe actually sitting on project boards to represent the stakeholders. So we can't have everyone from a faculty on a program board or a project board, but the team can then act as their proxy almost and their advocate, and to make sure that their needs are being represented. We have a lot of our effort is spent on understanding the needs of students, because that's our key business area. So it's understanding what's going on in their world, what challenges are they having. A particular system might not be working, it's a reoccurring theme, or there's they would love it if you could do something in a slightly different way. That information is all bundled up and then brought back in, and then we kind of look at it and see, well, do we have a solution in the pipeline, or is this something that we need to start to think about? How possible is it? How feasible is it? Those types of things.
Okay. So do you have oversight of everything that's going on, so you can kind of advise other departments, maybe something more important is coming in, or we should scale back on something?
Yeah, I would say oversight of the IT initiatives. The most businesses, I imagine, I mean, in our university, we've got quite a few different kind of strategic governance boards. And so we have oversight of what's happening in the IT world, but we don't necessarily have oversight of what's happening in another kind of strategic area. And that is a challenge, because if you don't know the full picture, then you can't always draw the links to the opportunities that may come from bringing it together. But one of the challenges that we as business partners are constantly facing is people want to do lots, but there's only one pool of resources that can deliver. And so if you don't always have that bigger picture of what's going on outside of the department, then you can't always be in a position to say, you know, the resource pool that we have is going to be able to satisfy all those needs, and we need to then start to push back on prioritization. But that's something that we need to work on. That's not always there, which is a challenge for us.
Is that a challenge? I know we've worked with a few universities, and it's very different from working with a regular business. I mean, the hierarchies are very well set. People are set in their ways. People know, you know, what they can and can't do. So is that a barrier? I think because of the way the university is structured, that trying to get entry to those points is just very difficult.
Yeah, I think it is a barrier, and what can sometimes be unfortunate is that, you know, we as an IT department, to overcome that barrier, could sometimes overcomplicate our engagement strategy.
Right.
Because it's like, well, we need to have lots of people talking to lots of different people, and that way we can make sure we're picking up all of the information. But what happens is when you've got that approach, there are then bigger risks of, well, information is going to fall through the cracks, because not everyone's going to have that complete picture of everything that's going on. So there is a fine balance, and I think we've got, you know, I think we've always got room to improve within our university, but I think we've got quite a good handle on how to approach it. It's not perfect, but always room for improvement. Just really, I don't say anything that gets me fired.
Yeah, true. Are there any kind of tools that you use or things that you've developed along the way that help your team perform their roles?
No, that's another good question. I find that's the one area of the business partner role I've always found a bit of a challenge. Like, well, what tool do you use? Our job is to nurture relationships, and it's to kind of, you know, tease out information that people have got in their minds. You know, we don't write business cases. We might support them, but that's not our tool to own. You can have engagement matrices or matrices, or RACI matrices, those types of things. I guess it's the thing about the role is it's you as an individual would approach it in the way that works for you. I don't typically have any tools that I use. It's just emails and, you know, those types of things, Teams chats and things like that. But others might use a specific tool. One thing that we have started to create, and this is off the back of another piece of training that we actually did, high performing BRM training, was the idea of a dossier. And it's essentially a Bible of your stakeholders. You know, what is their business made up of? How many people are within that area? What's a key concern for them, or what's a key strength of theirs? And so kind of going back to that question of, like, you know, someone new was to come into the team, how would you handle, you know, what would you approach for handover? What we hope is that once this is fully developed, you'll essentially have a database, crudely speaking, of everything you need to know about that area of the business. And you can kind of start to pick up from their themes, or just kind of raw data, really. So that's a tool that we're looking at kind of fully utilizing. It's currently in development, but other than that, it's quite ad hoc, just kind of what feels right to the situation.
I know from when I spoke to Bruna last week, she's developed her own things that just helps her be organized. I mean, BRM role is obviously it's a challenging role for that. There's a lot of plates to be spinning, as Martin said. So anything you can use to help you kind of control your environment is obviously good. But again, that's a personal thing. Some people are just better than others. But it is difficult to put a tool into place where you're more focused. Everyone else has got their own tools. All the people you're dealing with have got their tools to use, but you in the middle trying to kind of manage everything. It's difficult to have one thing that would work for all those different situations.
Yeah, that's right. I have a to-do list. Whether I look at it often and tick it off or not, I don't know. I probably use it a lot better than I do, because there's always something new coming in, kind of detracts you from the thing that you'd started off doing, and you're suddenly on something else. But no, there's something. I think there's opportunities there to kind of just pick up what you feel is right and kind of run with that. It's not a role that's looking at quantifiable output. Does that make sense? It's not like your a business partner's role is going to suddenly equate to a £1 million increase in turnover.
Yeah.
It's not quite like that. So the artifacts that you need on, it's not a business case or a statement at work or whatever it is. It's not quite like that.
I think that's why BRMs sometimes have trouble expressing their value, because what they do is help other people achieve things. So the value they contribute is by helping other people, provide value. So trying to demonstrate that can be tricky sometimes. But is there anything that you do, any kind of reporting you do to kind of show what you're working on? I mean, you mentioned earlier like the portfolio.
Yeah, so we do monthly reports, but I do that more in the capacity of I sit within the leadership team within IT, and so we're all tasked with producing a monthly report that goes to our directors and the CDIO to review, and that's just essentially what have you done, what are you going to do, what's key success, any risk and issues, and any kind of budgetary thoughts. So it's that kind of standard reporting we have, but we also the team, they look after. So I'm predominantly facing towards the professional services, the business area of the university, and my team are predominantly facing the academic and student kind of engagement. And so every time they go to a meeting of with a student committee, they would type up an email that summarizes those key points that were picked up in those forums. So again, it's not a formal, it's just an email, but that's how we would then bring all that information together and have it in one place so that we can kind of mine it later on when we're looking for areas that are themes and patterns that we can start to assess and then address.
Yeah. Do you have, just talking about things that are coming, different ideas, do you have as a team like an innovation session, or where you look at developments outside of the world and see what you can bring into the university?
No, and that's something that I feel is an opportunity. That's something that we've not explored. I feel in higher education and perhaps public sector, there's less appetite to do that, because it's not like you have a pot of money that's you can allocate to innovation.
Right.
We're often looking at how to respond to an external need. So you're kind of reacting.
Yeah.
Saying that, though, the university is looking at a digital strategy, and as a part of that plan, there is an innovation kind of team that could be spun up. But that would be a team, not the business partners. We wouldn't be doing that. That team would be given that responsibility to do it. So I wouldn't say that's something that we do. I would love for it to be a part of our responsibilities. But it's not been to now. It's not been a part of our responsibilities. It's not been something we've been asked to do.
Is there any other way, or has the BRM team evolved in any other way in the 10 years that you've been with them?
Well, other than changing from the BRMs to strategic business partners, I think that's probably the biggest kind of transformation for the team.
Right.
If you want to call it that. But no, they're quite it's a steady function. It's not really evolved, I would say. I try to do things that I try to align some of the other things that I do to the role of a business partner, because I think, so as an example, I manage the university's design and print function.
Okay.
This is one of those things, as you go up in leadership roles, you pick up other teams that sit outside maybe the direct role that you have. And at first you'd think, well, how does that even make sense? You've got a strategic business partner who then is suddenly working and managing an internal operation. What I would say is actually that's a fantastic opportunity, because as a business partner, you are positioned to be looking at and connected to so many different areas at university. You can almost become the ambassador for that service and say, well, did you know you have an internal function that could do all the things that you're looking for. And if our university strategy is sustainability, well, then you could inform the strategy of that service to say, right, start to become strategic, start to make sure that accessibility is at the heart of the design that we're producing. So even though it's a bit of a tenuous link between strategic engagement and print shop, you know, your role as a business partner does actually allow you to utilize that skill of making connections, seeing opportunities, seeing parallels between things, and then trying to bring them together, and then kind of feeding that into the way that that service operates. But I'm also I'm an external trustee of the student union here at the university, and again, that's a great. It's the skill set of a BRM. But you're applying it in a slightly different scenario of what's going on in the world of students, and students and researchers are kind of the heart of why we're all here.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that their needs and their challenges are being kind of captured and then addressed through, you know, whether it be projects or whether it be tactical fixes or whatever it may be. You start to broaden out. It doesn't have to just sit within you are an IT.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can start to look at different opportunities and say, well, actually, I could apply my skill set to that scenario to get the result that we're looking for. And I think that is the nice thing about the BRM role, is that it's a skill set, isn't it? It's something that you can apply to anything that you want to get involved in.
Yeah.
So it's got huge amounts of potential. I think it's got a huge amount of potential. The organization just needs to acknowledge the value it can bring and enable them to get on with it.
Yeah, and we find that so often. And actually, I was talking to some of the other people in the other episodes. I keep an eye on jobs that are being posted on LinkedIn, because I just refer them through to people we know that are looking. So many of these BRM jobs are not BRM jobs. You know, they're very, very tactical and operational, and they'll never be, you know, what we envisage a BRM role is. It's nice that you obviously are doing BRM kind of properly and being more strategic. When you're talking to other BRMs and people in the community, do you find that this is still a big challenge, that BRM is still really misunderstood and underutilized?
Yeah, definitely. So we lead we help the UK BRM community, which is the event that you were talking about that Jeremy was at. So we've hosted a few of those. I think 3 of those now, events, and that is the reoccurring theme of the roles misunderstood. We still get drawn into operational matters, and I think, you know, on the whole, you can do your best to try your best to grow the role, but if your organization doesn't want the role to operate in that way, you have to decide, is that an organization that you want to stay with? Or there's no point in fighting against something if there's not appetite for you to evolve. But that is a bit of a harsh thing to say, because so many people are trying so hard to change and evolve. So I think it's a bit of patience and perseverance that you've just got to keep on trying, and wherever you can, highlight the value the role brings to your senior managers so that they can really enable it or empower it. And what I find is it's managers who have either had a successful relationship with a BRM in a previous role, or have been a BRM in a previous life, that will really nurture that team or that role. Others who are not so much familiar with it don't often know what to do with it, and then that kind of that's where we find some of our struggles.
Yeah, it's a shame actually. I mean, we've worked with companies where BRM is really understood and flourishes and with the other guys in these other episodes, you know, you can really clearly see the value BRM brings. But we work with other companies and we've delivered training to them where they say, oh, wow, this sounds like a great idea, and then they go back to the office and they try to kind of introduce some of these ideas and are just shot down and nothing goes anywhere. And at first, I think we were a bit naive, because we were thinking, you know, this is so good. Why wouldn't people do it? You know, so just keep trying. You talk to these people, keep trying to influence. But I think the harsh truth is that some companies just don't want that. They're not used to it. They're not open to it. A lot of it is the senior management. If you've got a CIO that doesn't believe in this, it's just never going to go anywhere. And also the thing that's a shame is that you might have a CIO that believes in it, but when they leave, you have to hope the next one does. Otherwise, the whole thing can get blown apart. We've seen that a few times as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does give you a bit of it does make you think a bit about is the role positioned in the right way? You know, in the UK, is it seen something different to the way it is in the US? And you know, we've had conversations with colleagues in America, and the way that it's positioned of, you know, someone that engages with the C-suite. I don't know that many business partners in the UK that would engage with the C-suite.
Yeah.
So then you start to question, is the role positioned in the right way? Are what we aspiring to not overly ambitious, because I don't think you can ever be overly ambitious, but are we trying to run before we can walk? Like, do we need to embed the role in a certain way, and then you start to develop it upwards, rather than just saying, well, if I'm not engaged in the C-suite, then that means I've failed as a BRM. You know, I think so. There's sometimes we need to be good to ourselves and realize that we're not doing. It's not because we are deliberately being pushed downwards. It's just that the organization doesn't quite know how to lift you upwards.
Yeah. I've often wondered whether more could be done maybe by BRMs to just raise awareness of the capability. So if you can get to a point where you're kind of infiltrating the whole company, so in the end, everyone is thinking like a BRM, and the BRM capability becomes kind of so ingrained that even if the CIO does leave, it doesn't matter. And maybe the BRM team might shrink, but the capability will be there, and you'll still need BRMs as champions kind of dotted around the business to keep driving this thing. But it just becomes a more organizational thing rather than a role-based thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's what people try to do. I think that's what people are trying to do, is educate their colleagues as to what that capability is about.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the language we use can backfire on us, because like I said, if all of the training and all of the conversations that we always have is about you've got to be operating at that level, you're immediately going to turn people off, because, well, why would I invite you to that top table? What's in it for me?
Yeah.
And then we've got nothing to follow through with the statement.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. I think we need to, if we can create this solid foundation of what we can deliver, and that shows the potential of, if we were invited to those top tables, of how we can add value to the organization, I think we'll be in a better place. But I think sometimes we just need it's that language. It goes back to your ownership point. It's the language. What are we trying to, when we sell ourselves to our organizations, how are we pitching ourselves?
Yeah.
Because, you know, if someone came into your organization and said, right, I need to sit where you sit, I need to be privy to all of the conversations you're having, and I am going to somehow be able to draw a parallel between what you're thinking and what that person's thinking, and join the dots and all that. I mean, you know, it's a hard sell. And I think we're not at that as a role. We need to just get stronger at showing what we can do, and then what the potential is.
Yeah.
But that's only from my own experience, and when I want.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? There's other people who have a very different experience. Some people, my role is very different to my team's role. You know, I have the privilege of being involved in much more senior conversations than my team do.
Yeah.
So every organization may have differences in the way that their own team operates, let alone across different organizations, how BRMs operate, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's a misunderstood role, I feel, and I think there's lots that we can do, but we've got to be kind to ourselves and pitch ourselves at the right level first.
Yeah. I think when I spoke to Jeremy, he was saying that I think it was within Loughborough, not within Rolls-Royce, but they were very keen on doing the job trading positions, job sharing, so you get to, you know, mirror someone and learn about what they're doing, which is a great way to kind of understand the flows and the chains of information. Jag said that she actually pulled together like an internal connect event at her company, NFU, which is a great way of showcasing BRM, but also again to make sure that you're meeting with people in a kind of less formal environment, so you can really get to kind of talk to people, share your viewpoint, hear their viewpoint, and you're meeting people you don't necessarily normally talk to, learning from each other. So I think that's a really nice way, doing like an internal event for BRM as a way of really just spreading the word, making sure everyone knows who you are and why you're there. So you kind of avoid those weird questions and glances about people wondering what it is what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, we did something similar in terms of, so this was just before COVID, I think, or maybe during COVID, I can't quite remember, but we did a roadshow, but it was only within IT, and we literally went to every single team and we sat down and we talked to them about what we do, how we could help them, some of the areas that we probably wouldn't get involved in, like the operational things, but if we don't know the answer, we can point you in the right direction to somebody else, that type of thing. And we found that was really successful because it just let people, it allowed them to benchmark their expectations of like, okay, so I wouldn't go to you if someone's got a broken monitor.
Yeah.
Or academic is being particularly tricky. That doesn't necessarily mean I need to go to the BRM to sort it out.
Yeah.
But equally, someone's come to us with this idea, that would be the time I would pass it over to BRM, and then they can take it forward in the process. So from that perspective, I agree with Jag. I think having that kind of connection or roadshow, something that gives you an opportunity to get out there in front of people, is really useful.
Yeah.
We've never done it broader than that. It's just such a big organisation.
Sure.
We actually work in. It'll be quite difficult to get around there. But that's why we're starting to think of the kind of, a SharePoint page and a little video.
Right.
So, you can send that out to anyone or send them a link and say, you want to know more about the role. What's this 1-minute clip or something? And it'll give you a bit of a flavour of what we're about.
Yeah, no, I think that's really a good idea, especially if there's one of your faces behind that video, so people can kind of immediately see who it is and understand more about you. I think that's good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, and from your experience and what's worked for you and what hasn't, what would you, for people that are in a BRM role, what would be your tip for kind of, what do you kind of rely on? What skill set, what tool set do you call on every day that just helps you get through?
I think emotional intelligence is a really big one. I think you got to know what people are feeling, and then you know how to pitch the conversations you're about to have.
Right.
But it's also just letting people know they can trust you, because then that I think makes a big difference. If they know they can come to you with something, and it doesn't always have to be related to work.
Right.
But if they have a relationship with you and they can trust you, then they know when you're going to go to them later on with something that's coming from a good place, it's coming from a trusted source, coming from an advocate. And I think that's something that I rely on every day, is making sure that I have those positive connections and those trusted connections. But the other advice I would give people is just get involved in lots of things. If your work allows you to, if your manager is, happy for you to do that, get involved in all sorts. I chair the university's race, ethnicity and cultural heritage network. It's a voluntary role. Like I said, I'm an external trustee at SUSU. I sit on university council. I was able to kind of go through the interview process and get myself in a position where I could represent the professional services and that kind of top governance level. The more you can get involved in, the more it strengthens your role as a business partner, because A, you're exposed to more people, B, you're exposed to different things that are going on that helps fill in the knowledge gaps of just working in IT with that IT kind of, not mindset, but IT kind of roadmap, I suppose. And so that having bigger exposure as an individual then helps me become a bigger advocate for the role. Because if they know I'm involved in lots of different things and they can see that I'm trying to support all these different strands of activity, then it strengthens the perception people have of the role. Because they're like, so-and-so is involved in this and they know about this, and they're able to influence something in this forum. So it'd be, if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you can kind of start to dabble in different things, then that would be my biggest recommendation to anyone. It doesn't have to be IT centric.
Right.
You're about establishing relationship. You're about nurturing a relationship that can happen outside of the direct work remit that you have, I feel.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and that's something Jag was doing with the DEI and NFU, and Martin is obviously very involved in volunteer work. And it's really, as you say, you're not learning things that are kind of directly attributable to what you're doing, but they're life skills. They're rounding your character, and you're obviously kind of honing your empathy skills. So these are all things that, as a person, they make you a better person, and then give you more credibility. So when you tell people you care about them, they can see, well, actually, this is a genuine guy. He does, he's taken the time to know about me and other people, so it gives you credibility.
Yeah, and it also then opens you up to different conversations that are happening that do directly relate back to your job. Because you might be having a conversation with someone over, taking the ED&I as an example. If someone's talking to you about accessibility needs, right, and you're there in an ED&I space, well, immediately you could think, well, actually, IT could probably help you with that, because it could introduce a tool. So you're not only addressing the purpose you're there for a kind of a DEI perspective, but also then actually fulfilling your responsibilities as an IT professional as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's so many kind of parallel benefits from just getting involved in things that are outside of your work remit. It could be really rewarding on multiple levels.
Yeah. Wonderful. We're kind of at the end of our hour now, so we've been chatting on for a while. It's been really nice. It's been great to hear from you. Are there any other kind of words of wisdom or pearls that you'd like to drop to your peers, to people listening?
No, well, the world's pearls of wisdom was always, I don't know if I can take credit for any wisdom, but I think it's a fantastic role. I would say to everyone, don't get disheartened. There is a big community out there who are on this journey, the same as they are, about how to grow the role, how to kind of really show its the value that it brings. So don't be disheartened if you feel like it's not quite happening at the pace that you want. But be honest with yourself as to, in the organization you're in, are they looking for a BRM to be operating at the level that you feel that you're supposed to be operating at? And if they don't align, then that's not a bad thing. It means either you've got to find different ways to elevate it, or it might just not be the organization for you. There might be something else out there for you. I just see lots of people who get very sad that they're not able to hit these markers. I think people deserve better than that. Don't feel bad. It's just that might not just be the right fit. So there's an opportunity out there somewhere for you.
Wonderful. That's great. Thanks, Bhupinder. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for listening, and please subscribe to the channel so you can watch future episodes. And this one we post up in the next day or two. I'll leave it there, but thanks again, Bhupinder, and enjoy the holidays.
Brilliant. No, you too. Thank you very much.
All the best. Thank you.